All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome so much. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Chloe. I'm on the video team, Jazz Lincoln Center. In just a minute, we're going to join Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra tenor saxophonist Walter Blanding for a lesson on improving your technique on the tenor saxophone. In this lesson, Walter will guide you through warm-up techniques, scale patterns, improvisation games to enhance your skills on the instrument and inspire creativity. After the lesson, or during the lesson, Walter will answer questions from you all. I'll jump in and explain how to ask him a question. Actually, I'll just do that now. If you have a question sort of during the lesson, you can go ahead and message me privately, or you can, I'm actually going to turn the chat off for the time, or you can go ahead and use the raised hand function. To do the raise hand function, click the participants tab on the bottom of your Zoom window, and then in that participants tab, press the raise hand button. We'll see that, and we can call on you and unmute your mic so that you can ask Walter your question. So that's the end of my spiel for now. So Walter, you're up.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Just give you a little bit of information about me, some of my background. My name is Walter Blanding. I've been a member of the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra for about 20-something years or so. I've been living in Shanghai until recently, and I come from a musical family. Both of my parents play music. My father was a bassist. My mother is an incredible vocalist and pianist. And even my grandmother is a pianist composer, or she was a pianist and composer, and she taught music at the Cleveland Institute of Music, which is actually where my parents met. So music is in my blood, as it is in all of ours. I've been playing for 42 years, play the tenor saxophone, soprano, clarinet, bass clarinet, but my real passion is the tenor and soprano, and I love music very much. I've been living in New York for several decades. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, speak several languages, and looking forward to coming back to New York and rejoining the orchestra when this epidemic is over. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to show you a little bit about what I do. I've got a collection of things that many people have taught me, along with just kind of basic experimentation. And I think that one of the most important things I want to share with you today is why it's important to play music and appreciate music. As you know, playing a song or learning a scale, learning something new is a beautiful thing. But in and of itself, what does it really mean? Well, that's up to you to interpret what that means to you. And by the way, if you have any questions during this time, feel free to chime in, and I would love to answer your questions and discuss anything with you. That's a beautiful thing. But the reason why it's so important to appreciate and play music and appreciate any kind of a profound discipline, particularly jazz, is important because it's a music that's based on improvisation. And the skills that you need in order to learn how to play jazz, those things help you no matter what you decide to do in life. If you decide to become a musician or a banker or the president or a parent or whatever it is that you decide to do, the skills that take you through your journey of learning something in any type of a profound discipline really helps you learn how to use your mind, how to develop your creativity, how to solve problems, how to work together with a group of people, especially if the group of people might think differently from you at times. You can still say, well, we're still a group and here we are together and we are making an idea become reality. And all of these things come together to help us to be a more important part of society, and also helps to make this world a better place because we become more aware of each other. And by playing an instrument, what you're really doing is getting connected to yourself on a profound level, as you already know. And when you play with other people, you're also connecting with other folks in a very profound way, as we are all connected. And that's some of the joys of beauty of music. This is one of my tenor saxophones that I managed to bring from Shanghai. This is a Kahn. It's from 1928. And I like this one very much. I left the other one that I really love in Shanghai, but I'll just play a little something for you. That was fun. Sophisticated lady. So I'll continue. And as you have any questions, just feel free to chime in. One of the most important things for us saxophonists and people who play instruments that require breath is long tones. That's really important because a simple exercise like just playing a long tone and holding it as long as you can, trying to keep a steady tone, and trying to make what you consider to be a beautiful sound with no vibrato is a very simple thing that does many things all together. I think it's one of the most important things. When you play a long tone, you're developing your sense of being able to stop and be present. That's one of the most important things, right? You're connecting to yourself. It's almost like meditation. You're improving your breath, your strength, right? You're being able to hear the sound and know what that note is when you play it, right? And so these kind of things, it really helps you in the sense that the sound of your voice is so unique that as you play the long tones, you're getting more inside of yourself. And that really is a very good thing. There are many variations of this. So I'll just show you one or two different things. The most simplest one is just simply to take a deep breath and hold the note as long as you can, like this. Now, I held it as long as I could so that you could see what it takes for me to play that note until when I'm finished, I'm actually breathing heavily. If you, many times when I'm teaching people about this, I've seen people just play the note, you know, then they hold it for however long, 10, 20, 30, 40 seconds or 50. And when they're finished, they go, and it's kind of like, well, you didn't hold it as long as you could because you're not breathing hard. They just kind of stop. It's almost like a way of not realizing how much aware you are of just how long you're holding the note. And that's important. It's not a competition. Some people can hold it longer than others. But the purpose of this exercise is for you to do the best that you can to realize your own potential. And this is the part that makes you grow. And when you hold that note until you just can't take it anymore and you're stressed and you just want to stop, try to hold it for 5 more seconds or so. Because those last few seconds is the point that you grow. It's almost like doing push-ups, you know? Probably anybody could do one push-up, right? You could do one push-up forever. Wait 5 minutes, do one more, like that. But how easy is it to do 10? By the time you get to maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you'll start to struggle a bit. And that's the point that your muscle grows. So in a way, that's kind of what the purpose of this exercise is. When you're holding that note as long as you can, you are growing. And as you grow, that's the point of the exercise, to realize your own potential. It makes you better, it makes you stronger, it makes you more present, and it really helps a lot. That's one of the most important things. When I have considerable amount of time to practice, which is not often, but recently we've got a lot of time on our hands. The other thing is different types of technical exercises, which is basic for any instrument. You can find these types of things in any type of method book. The Universal Saxophone Method book is one, and every instrument has a particular method book. And so the idea is this. So I don't know how advanced or beginner you are, but this is a kind of universal thing. So no matter what your level is, you will definitely get something out of this. Actually, before I move on to those exercises, I want to just expand upon the long tones. So the idea is, if you play, for example, for those of us who, I'm assuming most of us play saxophones, but you start in the middle of your instrument and you hold that note like you just heard me do, and then you just go down chromatically, right? Take a breath, play the next note, hold it as long as you can, right? When you finish, play the next note. So it won't take too long, you know, maybe about 15 to 20 minutes, you'll find yourself at the bottom of your instrument if you start in the middle, right? So that's a good exercise. Now, another thing that you can do if you're a little bit more advanced, or if you already have been doing that exercise for quite some time, you can try to do this. It's a crescendo and diminuendo. And this is also very helpful, because then what you're doing is you're trying to balance the time between your crescendo and your diminuendo. And one of the most important things about that is to realize the maximum that you can play. How soft can you really play, and how loud can you really play? Even some of the most seasoned professionals have difficulty dealing with dynamics. And that's a very important part of musical expression. So as we go through this lesson, I'll try to show you how these things can help you when it comes to actually playing music, as opposed to just some kind of an exercise, right? So getting back to the technical exercise, one of the things that you can do, this one is from the Universal Saxophone Method book, and it's a very simple exercise that goes like this. Right? I mean, I played it so much when I was younger. I think it's on page 63 or 83. If you have that book, check and see if I'm right. Anyway, these are like little 2 or 3 bar excerpts with a repeat sign. So if you're a little bit more advanced, right, what you can do is use a metronome if you're not sure about your time, and you can take one exercise and play it all over your horn. Very simple. So you start doing. Or you can do a crescendo and diminuendo. Right? And there's so many different variations of that, but that's a real good basic one to start with. Then we have scales. There's about 5 different things that I kind of consider like a menu, like a good diet if you're having a well-balanced meal. So when you practice, you definitely want to have a plan in mind for achieving something. Some people practice 8, 9 hours a day. And when you hear them play, you say, oh my God, what have you been doing for 9 hours? I'm amazed, you know? So it's not really the time that you spend that's important. It's how well you spend the quality of the time that you have. So for example, those long tones, you can play for 15 to 20 minutes, seriously concentrated, no television, no radio, no text message, like really concentrate and focus on the goal. What is the goal? I'm going to try to get through these notes in these 15 minutes and try to really just meditate and focus on keeping my sound steady and holding that note as long as I can. Just a simple thing like that. You'd be surprised after 7 days, you'll feel like Gandhi. You'll be flying in the air. People say, wow, you look different. Something's different about you. I don't know what it is. I'm nothing, man. I'm just practicing my long tones. Guaranteed it'll work, right? After 15 or 20 minutes or so of doing that, you can take a break for 5 minutes because it's intense concentration, almost like a circuit training if you like exercise, where you do different exercises seriously and very short, and you take a break, right? This is a good way to grow very quickly, right? So you take a break, get a drink of water or so for 2 minutes, and then you come back, work on those technical exercises, for example, right? From the Universal Saxophone Method book with a metronome. You can put the metronome where the quarter note equals 80, for example, and try eighth notes, see how that goes. It's another very good thing to do. I used to do for many years is to write in a little notebook, a journal, as you practice on each day, what you do and how long it's took you to do it and what the tempo of the quarter note is. It will save you a lot of time. Many times we practice and we waste a lot of time trying to find that right tempo for what we were doing before that we had forgotten about. So a journal will really help you. And in this way, you start to become your own teacher, and you can kind of look back through your notes and see how your development has gone and what things you've worked on and what things you think you need to work on more, right? Okay, so after that, we've got scales, right? And there's only 12 notes in Western music. So people are talking about the Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian, all of these Latin, Greek names and all of that. And it is, that's true, but it's just different variations of basically the major scale. So you should be able to play all 12 of your major scales, right? And just like this. Right? Now, one of the things that's important is everything you play, you should play like you mean it. Good practice makes good habits. I'll give you an example. My daughter used to play flute when she was about 12 or 13 years old, right? She's 24 now. And I remember she was so excited. She learned this song and she played it for me, and she played it. She said, and I said, wow, man, that's great. You played Happy Birthday. You're really happy, you know? And so I said, well, how would you play that song if you just lost your best friend? And she went. Right? So I thought, okay, you know, that could be real. Maybe that's how she really feels, you know? So I said, well, how would you play that if you just got a brand new pair of shoes? And she went. Right? So together we kind of realized that there wasn't too much difference between those different versions, and thinking about how to put your emotion in what you're doing, whether it's a song or a simple scale or just an exercise, is extremely important, because that's the whole point of what you're doing, right? So when you play your scales, I would like for you to try to imagine that you're not just playing a scale because, you know, I've got to get through these 12 scales in the next hour, or I've got an assignment and, you know, I'm going to get to this point by next Thursday. That's not the point. The point is you want to improve yourself. As I said in the beginning, why is it important for us to appreciate and play music? Because we get connected to ourselves and we connect with each other. And that's the point of these exercises and what we're doing, is to connect to ourselves. So if you play your major scales and you're going, That's cool, right? But what would you play it? How would you play it if you were at Madison Square Garden, right? And there's 10,000 people came to see you play your major scale. Grandma's there. She's got her glasses and everything, and they're taking pictures and everything, right? You would definitely play it differently, right? You'd probably be like, right? And that's how you should play everything. Right? Okay, so that's just a simple scale going up and down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth, right? So if you're advanced and you can play all 12 of your major scales, several octaves with no mistakes, in perfect time, crescendo and diminuendo, or however you see fit, and you can do them all evenly and all the same, so then you have to challenge yourself to find different ways to keep doing the same thing. Now, this is my menu that I've been playing for decades, and I still do it, and it still helps. In that case, you can start to think of creative ways to challenge yourself. For example, you can play those same scales in groups of 2 notes, 3 notes, 4 notes, 5 notes, 6 notes, and even 7, right? So now, if you can do that, you can do this. Right? And if you're really brainy, a nerd like me, you might think, okay, that's one direction, but there's another. I just played, let me see, I played up. So when I went up, I played the notes up. And when I went down, I also played the notes up. Well, you can play the notes down as well, right? Right? And then you can also play 1 up, 1 down, going up, and 1 up, 1 down, coming down, and the opposite. So there's actually 4 ways that you can play that. Now that's only 2 notes, but when you use 3 or 4 notes, then it becomes kind of interesting. For example, with 4 notes. Right? Up and down. You get the idea. Always use a metronome. It will really help. Right? I'll move on. There's so many variations of that you can do. But now we get to something else, which is different ways of working with chords, scales, and arpeggios, right? Because chords and arpeggios come from scales. So for those of you who might not be so sure about what an arpeggio is, and these types of things are the building blocks of the language of music. That's why we're going through them, and it really helps when it comes to improvisation, which we will get to as well, right? So when you take this, and now you've got the first note, the third note, and the 5th note of the scale, you'll get a triad, 1, 3, 5, right? And it's good to think in terms of numbers, because then it becomes easier when you have to translate to different keys. It's the same numbers in every key, right? So if you play, now in Western music, basically there's only 4 basic triads or arpeggios. An arpeggio is the first 3 notes and then the first note again, right? And those are the basic 4 triads or arpeggios that make up most of Western music based on the 12-note scale, 12-note tones. And so that is the augmented arpeggio, the major arpeggio, the minor arpeggio, and the diminished, right? So the major one is the first, the third, and the 5th note of the scale, right? So that's 1, 3, and 5. It sounds like this. Right? When you put that first note again on the top, you've got an arpeggio. That's the major arpeggio, right? So you can play that with all of its inversions, and it sounds like this. Right? Then you have the augmented, which is 1, 3, sharp 5, and 1. That sounds like this. Then you play that with its inversions, and you got. Right? And then you've got the minor arpeggio, which is 1 flat 3 5 1. Right? Are you following me so far? I'm surprised nobody has questions. Okay, good. I can see some of you. I saw your finger. Great.
Well, there has been a question, but I didn't want to interrupt you, and I think you're sort of answering it. But Andrew wanted to know, like, how you just wanted you to describe how you decide what to practice on a daily basis.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a good question. Well, like I said before, you use the time that you have value. You use, speak so many languages, my English is all messed up. You valuably use the time that you have.
Sure.
That wasn't right, but I know you know what I meant.
We know.
So basically the idea is play your long tones, play some scales, play arpeggios, and work on some music. If you can cover these 4 things in a day, you probably practice for about 3 or 4 hours, and you're doing good. And if you do that for every day, after a week or 2 or 3, you start to feel like Superwoman or Superman, right? But sometimes life gets in the way and we have things to do. So sometimes you're not able to put in all of that time every day. But consistency is very important in organization. That's what will really help you get through the times where you might have less hours to practice. So if you have 4 or 5 hours or so, you can get through everything. If you only have 2 hours, maybe even 1, then you have to choose intelligently what you think that you need to work on and what can help you best. And if you're practicing every day, it will be okay. As I said before, the point is to be consistent. So, for example, now we're talking about the arpeggios. I'll get back to that in a minute, but I'm going to answer your question now. So if you have an hour, if you have 4 hours, you can play, for example, you can plan your time. Say, okay, I've got 4 hours, so I'm going to do 40 minutes and then a 10-minute break, right? And I'm going to do that 4 times, and that'll give me another 40 minutes. So I've got 5 different subjects that I can cover. I can do long tones, dexterity exercises, scales, arpeggios, and then I can work on a song, maybe a song that I like or something creative, some type of a creative thing. You want to also have a freedom within the structure. So you get through your structure first, and then you let yourself be free, right? And so as you do these types of things, you've got a real good plan. Of course, you can mix that up. Maybe you feel like on a particular day, it's more important that you just spend the entire hour working on something that you feel like you want to achieve, right? So important for you to say, whatever time I have, I'm going to achieve something, even if it's a little thing. I might realize, wow, you know what? All of this time I was playing with my neck a little bit too far to the left. How could someone tell you that? We're all different. Only you can find that out through practicing, right? Now, there's another part of this, which is imitation. And because we're speaking the language of music, and music is a language, just like a baby learns how to speak from mommy, that's how we learn this language. You want to make sure that you're listening to the people who created whatever style of music it is that you want to learn. Notice how I chose my words carefully. The people who created the music, right? Because there's all kinds of things that sometimes we can be mistaken about. And that's why it's very important to look at things and kind of do a little research and ask questions, you know, don't take my word for it. For example, I don't know if you've heard of Yanni, right? There was this guy in the 80s named Yanni that came out as like a great classical pianist. First of all, the word classical is misused because classical means classic of something, right? Classic of an era, right? So what does that mean, classical? But you know what I mean, we use that word, right? Horrible. But if no one knows and you take that as a truth, then that would be your basis of understanding until you are exposed to other things. Here's another example. Kenny G is not a good example of a jazz musician at all. Now, I'm not putting the man down. He has a right to do whatever it is he wants to do. God bless him. Everybody does, and we all do. I'm not putting him down for that. I'm happy for him. He's happy, we're all happy. That's good. But you have to know what a thing is. If I tell you I'm going to give you a tomato and it's an apple, that's not right. So that's the point of what I'm saying. So as you learn this language, it's just like when you're a baby and you might, mommy says to you, I love you, and you're just 3 days old. You might not know what that means, but you know the sound, you know the feeling, you know something that is good, right? And as you hear mommy and daddy speak and you get older, you start to hear words and you imitate your parents. That's why we call it mother language. What do you do at that point? You're not thinking, let me see, the verb comes before the adjective. I'm going to express, wait a minute, this is the predicate or the subject. Is it, wait, if you do that, you never speak, right? Instead, you copy. You hear, you pay attention, you learn, right? And then you start to figure out how to say what you want, which is, I want my bottle. I don't like that. I'm not going to sleep. Those kind of things. So in music, it's exactly the same. If you play saxophone and you want to play jazz, you'll have to listen to the saxophonists who created jazz. And those people are John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, Stan Getz, Lester Young, Pepper Adams, Jerry Mulligan, Coleman Hawkins, Ben Webster, Sidney Bechet, Cannonball Adderley. There are so many. That's just to name a few. Those are the people who created this music, not Kenny G. That's just as an example, like apples and oranges. So that's another part of your practice. So that was a very long, extended answer to your question. Use the time that you have valuably. Yeah. Okay. So
Walter, I have a couple questions in the chat, and I have someone who wants to ask a question. Yeah. You wanna just go through them?
Yeah, it's okay. I've been doing this for decades. Get back to it.
All right, let's go to Keith. Keith, what's your question?
Hi, Keith.
Hey, so my question is about overtones. I think you can hear me.
Yes.
So I've been starting to practice overtones a lot more lately to work on my tone. I've been doing the thing where, you hold the overtone, and then you release your fingers and go to the normal fingering for that note and try to match it.
Yes.
I can't seem to consistently get the third, when you go up to the next octave above, I can't consistently get that overtone to come out or anything above that. What advice would you have about that?
Okay, I'll give you a couple of different things. There's always many ways to approach a thing. There's no one answer, but I'll give you a few different things. There's a great book by Rosemary Lang.
Okay.
She calls it Overtones or Top Tones for the Saxophone, as well as Top Tones for the Saxophone is another author. I think that's Sigmund Rascher, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's another great book to get. But so when you look at that, they're going to be explaining different techniques with the words because it's just a book, and they've got the notes written and you can they'll give you some suggestions of what to practice. That will help you, but it will take time. You have to be patient. You're not going to get it in a day or a week. You just keep practicing it every day. So that will be a part of your practice program. You'll be working on your long tones for 10 to 15 minutes every day, you see? Now,
Walter, can you repeat the name of the books that you just said?
Yes. I think it's called Overtones. Now, I have to Google it because I haven't seen that book in so many years.
You could tell me. I could Google it. What's the name?
Mary Lang is the author of the first book.
What's the name?
Rosemary Lang.
All right.
Right? And I think it's called Overtones for the Saxophone. It's a really good book. And there's another book by Sigmund Rascher. I'm not sure if I pronounced his last name correctly. I think that's called Top Tones for the Saxophone. It's another one, right? And both of those are very helpful. So I'll just give you a couple of pointers from my perspective, what you can do. So you said you're having problems getting past a certain point. So what you want to do is don't worry about it. Don't stress. Do what you can, but spend 5 minutes working exactly on the problem. If it's that note that you can't get, So for 5 minutes, work on that note only. And you can play games. Like you could say, all right, it's like shooting a ball in the basket. I'm going to try 10 times. Let's see how many times out of 10 I get it. You might get 0, you might get 1, you might get 3. You know, those are ways to kind of practice using your intention to make an idea become a reality, because our minds are very powerful. And those are the things. And as you do that, each time you're also going to notice whatever subtle differences that you're doing that's helping you to create the tone, almost like a scientist, you know?
Yeah.
So a couple of things you can do, for example, you can try using the octave key. Press the octave key down when you play the low notes. That will help the harmonics to come out. Ideally, you want to play it without the octave key, but it can help, you know? And so as you go, right? So what that really is kind of like what brass players do. They do it all the time when they warm up because they only have 3 valves. We're lazy because we've got a million buttons.
Yeah.
Just a brass tube, you know, it serves the same, it does the same thing. So what you can try to do is just try to do kind of like, you can do a lot of things, but one thing you can do is try to do what brass players do. If you hear them warm up, sometimes they're going. Right? With whatever notes that you can play. Yeah?
Like just slurring back and forth like that.
You can try that, that's right. And you can even, here's another, and that's why long tones are so important, because when you're playing your long tones, you're getting your embouchure set for that note. And as you know, it's just a bell tone that within that note, you are already playing all the other notes. It's just the more prominent one is the one that you hear, but you're actually playing them all anyway already. So you might want to even consider at some point trying to, as you're trying to get each note, you will find yourself playing several of them at the same time. Right? You can kind of hear that. Yeah. So just spend like about 5 minutes after you do your long tones, focusing on just like the problem. That will really help.
Okay. Yeah. Because a lot of the time I just seem to like power through like all of them and just figure, oh, it'll happen when I get more comfortable with these ones. But
right. That's what we do. We tend to do that. I do that too. We get impatient because you know what you want and you know what you can do. So you kind of rush through it to try to hope that you get there quickly. But actually, the fastest way is to slow down and just take it a little bit at a time.
Gotcha.
Good question.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you very much for taking the time to talk about that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Keith. Okay, we got a couple of questions in the chat about mouthpieces. Someone wants to know what you're using in terms of mouthpiece, and someone else asked that they said that they spend a lot of time on the different combinations of mouthpieces and reeds, and are rarely able to get a comfortable sound.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll give you a few examples. Played in a few different bands, especially big bands where you've got a lot of saxophone players. Everybody's different, and you can't judge and you can't hate because everybody's got their own thing. Some people have a million reeds and they're looking for the right one and they never can find it, right? Some people just put a reed on and play it. I'm the kind that just puts a reed on and plays it. And the reason why, but that doesn't mean you should do the same, but the reason why I'm like that is because I always think about people like, for example, Charlie Parker, who used to play on anybody's horn and still sound like himself. And I wonder, like, you know, if Sonny Rollins took my tenor saxophone with this mouthpiece and reed right now, I bet you he would sound like Sonny Rollins. So maybe it's psychological, but you know, but on the other hand, the reed and the mouthpiece makes a huge difference. So I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying. It's important to take the time to try to find the right combination for you. And it's different for everyone. Some people like a larger bore mouthpiece with a softer reed. Some people like a smaller chamber with a harder reed. One of my friends plays 5 reeds, but his mouthpiece is about 6 or something like that. And so it depends on what you feel comfortable with. But I think that if you practice regularly and don't hang up too much, don't get caught up too much on any one issue. That's just one of many issues that we deal with as saxophonists, you know. It's the reed, it's the weather, it's how I'm feeling, it's the mouthpiece. All of that makes a difference. You might have a leak in your horn, and it does make a difference. But if you're consistently working through that regardless, you're going to be great no matter what happens. And as you work through those problems, you will eventually feel comfortable with knowing what is the right combination for you. So my mouthpiece is it's a Van Duren T95, and it's cool. I like it. The reeds that I use are number 3. I don't even remember. Gosh, that's a shame. V16. I use V16's number 3s. And I think that the bore of my mouthpiece is probably similar to about an 8 or 9, something like that. Oh. Now, here's a couple of tips. One thing I have noticed, when I get a reed and it's not right, see if I got my thing right here, it would be very handy if I had it on hand. I don't, but I'm just going to show you here. If you take your reed and you put it to the light, you can see that there should be like a V shape, kind of like this, just going, you know, a V like that. So what you want to do sometimes when you're looking at the king, you might want to look at it and see as you play it. First of all, looking at it doesn't always mean that it's going to play a certain way anyway. You should probably just play it first and feel it. And then you take it off and kind of take a look at it and kind of see, just like a scientist, and say, okay, it feels a little hard on the right side. And if you look at it, maybe you'll see that the V is uneven. You might want to take a little piece of sandpaper and just kind of lightly brush it a little bit. And you'll probably destroy several reeds before you feel comfortable with knowing, you know, just how much is right for you. That's a good suggestion.
Awesome. Thanks for the question. All right, we have quite a few in the chat. I'm going to go back to a couple that I missed. Simone wants to know what the first solo was that you ever transcribed.
Oh my God. Nobody ever asked me that question before.
Good question, Simone, from Italy.
Oh, Simone, grazie per questa domanda. La prima canzone che ho imparato, you didn't know.
Showing off. He's showing off, everyone.
The first song that I learned to play, to improvise over, that was the question, right? Improvise.
That you transcribed, the first solo you transcribed.
Oh, the first solo I transcribed, actually transcribed?
Yeah.
I think it might have been Lester Young. What was that song? That was a long time ago. I can't believe I almost kind of remember it. Lester Young. That reminds me of the first time I actually tried to improvise in front of people. Ooh, it was scary. So what happened was I'd spent a long time practicing playing the piano, practicing the chords and all of that with my parents, and they go through the stuff. We used to play Bach's 4-part chorales, and I would watch my parents struggle through Chopin and stuff regularly. So I knew harmony, I knew chords, I knew my scales, I knew melodies, I could read music. But then when it's like, okay, now improvise, it's kind of like, the shock of, okay, what am I supposed to do? Well, it says C major, play. I'm like, play what, right? Very scary moment. I remember that. I thought that was going to be your question. But yeah, that was my first song. So relating to that question, how do you take these things and how do you use them to be able to build music and improvise, right? For those of us who are either beginners or even advanced, right? So you can take these types of things. I was talking about those arpeggios. When you use those, you can use those arpeggios to kind of hear the basic sound of a song, even though the seventh is missing. If you advance, you can also add the seventh, right? The 1, 3, 5, and the seventh of each chord, right? But even if you just take the basic triad, you can, Jesus, hello. With just the basic triad, you can kind of hear the structure of a song. Here's an example. You can take like, let me move back so I can play my own Happy Birthday. I'm kind of playing around, but you can hear me play Happy Birthday, right? And it's just an exercise. I wouldn't really want to play that as if that's my solo, but that's one example of how you can use an exercise as a way of developing your creativity. And you can use very simple methods that are very effective and immediate to learn how to develop your creativity, because that's what we're talking about. It actually goes beyond the scope of music. We're talking about solving problems, thinking outside of the box, right? Finding other ways to do something. So you can say, for example, if we were all together in a room and somebody threw a ball in the room and said, go for it and lock the door, without any rules, it would be chaos. We probably could just run around and just throw the ball at each other or on the wall. What would we be doing with no rules, right? All of a sudden now, you put a basket on one side of the room and you say, okay, now try to put the ball in the basket. Now it becomes interesting because now we're using our creativity to try to put the ball in the basket. And even if we put another thing and say, okay, I'm going to draw these lines while you're trying to put the ball in the basket, you can't step outside of this line. Now it becomes even more interesting. So in that way, you can do the same thing when you learn a song. And it could be any song. It could be Happy Birthday, a blues. It could be Giant Steps. It could be, what did I play earlier? Sophisticated Lady. Whatever it is, you get a song. And if you don't know the chords to the song, I would suggest you get a recording of someone who created the music. Remember we talked about that, right? As a reference, just like the baby who learns how to speak from mommy, right? So you can hear the language of the music just to get a feeling, right? You can imitate that person, like my man from Italy who asked me about transcribing. That's a very good way to study and to be able to understand how to get the language. And then also it would help if you read music to get the sheet music. Now, there are all types of ways that you can look online. Make sure you get a version that's most likely correct. And I would suggest something that's kind of official as opposed to the, what's it called, the real book. The real book is good too, though. But if you use the real book, you have to check for mistakes because oftentimes there are small errors here and there, right? To make sure you're getting the right version. And you can take that song. Now it has the chords written on it. And we talked about the scales. So now you have an objective. If you're not sure what to do, you can play the scale of each chord. If the scale is C major and it's 1 bar long, guess what? If you play from 1 to the 7th, 8th notes, it will come out in time perfectly. So now you've got a method for playing scales over the chords. If the chord is 2 bars long, you can play from the root to the 7th and back down to the root, and it will come out perfectly if the time is 4/4. So there's a way that you can play your scales through songs now, because you're practicing your 12 scales anyway, right? We just talked about the arpeggios. You can do the same thing. You play the arpeggios just like I did now through the song. But when you practice your arpeggios without playing a song, it's best to do them in order, organized, so that you actually purposefully know what you're doing. Play 1, 3, 5, 7, and then the first inversion, 3, 5, 1, 3, and 5, 1, 3, 5, and then 1, 3, 5, 1, an octave up, and then play it down. You want to do that through the augmented, major, minor, and then diminished. And do them in order for every key. Don't switch them up. That way you are purposefully training yourself to do exactly what you intend to do. This is training your mind to realize your ideas, right? That's how you practice. Then when you have a song, you can practice the scales, you can practice the arpeggios, just like we talked about going into a room with a ball and make a line. You can make all kinds of rules. You can say, all right, I'm only going to play whole notes. It might seem boring, but believe it or not, the fact that it's boring is what's going to help you to be creative, because naturally your mind is going to want to make logic out of anything that you do that's random, right? That's how intelligent we are. This is very simple and effective way to develop your creativity. Take it a step further and you can say, all right, I'm going to put on a metronome. I'm going to play this song now that I've got the chords too. I've been working with a little bit. I understand the chords. I've played the scales. I got it. Now I'm going to play one chorus of whole notes, and then I'm going to play one chorus of half note triplets, and then one chorus of half notes, and then one chorus of quarter notes, and then quarter note triplets, and then eighth notes, and eighth note triplets if I can. Right? At that point, you'll probably realize that the tempo might be too fast and you slow it down. Slower is always better than faster because you got time to think and make it perfect and you know how it feels. When you play fast and you kind of slop through it and it's never right and you think that you will get it eventually, all you're doing is practicing bad habits and you will never get it right. Okay? So now that's another thing. Here's another thing that you can do to develop your creativity using these different techniques. Now, you can use ideas like I'll play the 3rd and the 7th of every chord only. I can play anything out, any rhythm or idea I want, but only the 3rd and the 7th note of each chord, right? Right? Here's another idea that you can do. You can say, okay, now I'm just going to only play a theme, right? I'm only going to play one theme. And that's a good exercise because many times what we find ourselves doing is we play a lot of things, right? Because our minds are moving so fast. And in one chorus, you might play 12 ideas. Gosh, that's enough for about 6 songs, right? What are you going to play on the second song? Those 12 ideas again, right? You start to bore yourself. And so you start to play more because if you stop, then the silence will make you hear what you played. And it's like, oh man, did I do that? Right? So practice theme and variation. Practice one idea, right? So you might say, let me see. Right? I've got rhythm, right? So you might say, almost sounds like Coltrane's right? But that's an idea. You can do that, right? For the whole chorus, right? Do the chords, do the changes. But leader, that's it. No other ideas, only that one, right? Or you can also use different conceptual ideas, like I'm going to be something. It's almost like acting and pretending. It could be whatever you want to be, right? I want to be angry. I want to be sexy. I want to be happy. I want to be sad. I want to be slow. I want to be fast. I want to be a grizzly bear. I want to be molasses. How would you play that? Feel me? that's my grizzly bear. It don't have to be yours. You can have a different one. That's cool. Or you can do the opposite. You say, all right, I want to be, what's that little bird that eats from the flowers that flaps its wing 1,000,000 times a second? The hummingbird, right? Might be hummingbird, butterfly. Yeah. Why not? You can put a metronome on and do that for a whole chorus, right? See what happens, right? You make those rules and you stay within the rules. It helps you develop your creativity. And then say, okay, now I'm going to do one chorus. I'm just going to play anything I want, no rules. You'd be surprised to see how fast you've jumped to the next level, right? Any other questions?
Awesome. Yeah, let's get to Reeve. Reeve's had his hand up for a while. Go ahead, Reeve.
How you doing, Walter?
Hi, Reeve. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question for when you listen to jazz. What type of jazz do you like? What music do you listen to for jazz? Like, what do you listen to mainly? Like, if you're like just taking a break or something, what do you listen to?
Well, it depends on what period I'm going through. You know, over the years, things change. I'll go through periods where I'm just listening to mostly one artist, and then I'll go through periods where I just kind of mix everything up. I'm in that period where I just sometimes I'll open my iTunes and I'll just play anything. Mm-hmm. But then I'm starting to find out that iTunes, they're trying to charge me a monthly fee for the song that I already paid for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I'm actually a trombone player, not a women player, but I can listen to like Bill Waltz or J.J. Johnson, and I can just listen to my iTunes. It's kind of cool, yeah. Man. I was like, and I like your ideas with the improvisation and all that stuff. It's been really cool tactics because my band director is a saxophonist. Well,
so, beautiful.
Yeah, so yeah. Mm-hmm.
Everything. I love all music, but I am a jazz musician, so that's my specialty. But I like everything. Literally.
Yeah, he likes jazz the most. He likes jazz. Yeah.
Thanks, Reeve.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right, let's go to a question from Annabella. Annabella wants to know, her question is about tuning and how you approach that. Do you adjust to match the tone with your tongue placement, opening up your throat, raising eyebrows, airspeed, air quantity, oral posture, soft palate, and I quote from Annabella.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a lot. If you think too much about it, you'll never be in tune. I think, honestly, for tuning, it's relative. You're tuning to something, and that is tuned to whatever it is. So the question is, are you tuning to someone else, or is someone else tuning to you? Or are you both tuning to a pitch that is produced from some type of a thing like a tuning fork or something like that? When you're doing that, it's almost instinctual. I would say that's why it's important to play long tones, because as you play those long tones, you're holding a note for a long time. It's allowing you to be able to connect yourself to the instrument, that you're able to feel what it feels like when you play sharper, if you blow faster. Does the pitch go flat? Sometimes it does. If you squeeze more, will it be sharp or flat? You know, those types of things. Is the mouthpiece too far in, or is it at a particular point that is the right place for most of the horn to be in tune? Sometimes also, especially an instrument like this that's very old, it's very difficult to play in tune. So I have to adjust. So there is no one answer. It's kind of like we are artists and scientists. So I would recommend the best thing for you to do to be able to play in tune is keep practicing your long tones, and don't try to focus on whether you're in tune or not. I'll give you an example. I remember I went through a period where while I was playing my long tones, I was wondering if I was in tune, and it was disrupting my concentration. But I kept checking the tuner periodically to see if I was in tune. And when I checked the tuner, I would see that I wasn't, and then I'm trying to adjust. And so I wasn't really focused. But then after some time, I started to discover that if I didn't even pay attention to it, and I'm just focusing on actually trying to play clear and straight, if I look, I'll discover I'm right in tune. So maybe that will help you. Yes. Good question.
Thanks, Annabella. Okay, we have time for a couple more questions, but before we get into that, just have a little spiel. Please make sure to join us again, everybody. We'll be hosting free live events every day throughout the coming weeks. More masterclasses, conversations with members of the orchestra, question and answer sessions with Wynton, live performances, and more. Our next masterclass is actually going to be on Monday. That's with Dan Nimmer, pianist for the Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra. He's going to take us on a guided listening session through some of his favorite jazz recordings. So be sure to join us for that deep dive into some of our music's masterpieces. That'll be Monday, April 27th at the same time on Zoom and on Facebook Live. That's the Jazz Academy at Facebook Live. For a full list of upcoming events and archive concerts, please check out Jazz Lincoln Center's brand new online hub. That's at jazz.org. And thank you again so much to everyone for being a part of this community. If it's within your means, please consider making a donation. We are a nonprofit organization. We're extraordinarily grateful for contributions of any amount, and to our supporters and donors, we cannot thank you enough. So let's get into some final questions for Walter. Let's find some. Kevin wants to know, Walter, he has some advice on how to practice different time signatures other than 4/4.
Yeah, attack it straight on. It's like the Nike commercial said, just do it. Just do it. Play a song in 3/4 and just keep playing in 3/4. If you're not sure, use a metronome if you're by yourself. One of the good things about practicing alone is and making sure that you're trying to play chords and ideas in time is that you develop an incredible sense of individuality, which really helps when you play together with a group. So in order to play odd time signatures, I think you don't want to look at it as an odd time signature. If you know nothing, everything is the same. So 3 is the same as 4 and 5 and 6. You just do it. Just learn it. How did you learn how to play in 4/4? It's the same way you would learn to play in 3/4 or 5 or even 7. Sometimes with larger numbers like 7, you might want to break it up into 4 and 3. Miguel, Charlie Parker's song is best to transcribe. Blues is always the best. Blues is a very good foundation for jazz, as it is America's folk music, and it's a foundation for jazz, rock and roll, R&B, a lot of things. So I would suggest if you really want to get into jazz as well, make sure you have some blues. And that means you want to listen to all the people who have played the blues, including blues musicians, which is not jazz musicians, but people like B.B. King and stuff like that. That's also blues straight up. So I got a question someone asked about what Charlie Parker song. The Charlie Parker the Omnibook has a lot of great transcriptions of songs. Pick a blues. Those would be really good. Mm-hmm.
There you go. All right, next question. What song memorizing techniques do you use? This person spends much time attempting to memorize songs and during jam sessions is never able to fully recall the tune and says it's quite embarrassing at times. Any advice?
Very, very, very good question. Transcribing is a very good way to develop your memory. But when I say transcribing, that's not really what I mean. It's important to transcribe because as you write rhythms down that you're trying to get from the soloist, you're learning about rhythms and writing and reading and writing. That really helps. But in addition to that, you want to also get away from the pencil and paper and use headphones. Put the headphones at a volume that you can hear the person that you're playing along with, as well as yourself. And you learn that solo note by note. And you just start with a little bit, right? First of all, you would listen to the song, familiarize yourself with that song just to hear it. And then you start with the solo, and you start with the first part of the melody, the first phrase of the melody, right? If it's dee 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 loody, dee 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 loody, so just take that little dee 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 loody and start with the first note, and you copy it. You listen to it, you stop it, you try to play it, see if you got it. You rewind, you listen to it again, stop, try to get it. When you think you've got it, then try to play it along with the recording at the same time, and you will hear if something's not right. And so the purpose of this exercise is that you want to try as best you can to sound just like that person. It's just an exercise. You actually can't. But as you try to do that, you're learning, just like we're talking about the language, and you learn things that no one can really teach you through that experience. And so as you do that first phrase, then you move on and do the same process for the second phrase. When you get the second phrase, go back to the first phrase and play both of them together. It's almost like a back stitch if you've ever done sewing, right? When then you get to the third phrase, you learn that third phrase. When you got it, you go back to the first phrase and play the first three phrases together, right? Keep doing that. That will really help to develop your memory. And you will find yourself able to hear a song as they're playing it that you don't know, and you'll be able to understand what are the chords and the structure of the song and be able to play over it in time.
Awesome. Does anyone have anything else? I feel like I missed a couple, but if you have any final questions for Walter, don't be shy to use the raise hand function and I can call on you. Sometimes it's easier to do it than trying.
Ligature. This is
ligature, yeah.
This is a special ligature. It was made by a friend of mine. I used to play these French ligatures that were made of wood, and it was round, and I dropped it and it broke, and I glued it together. It was never the same, and I couldn't find another one just like that because it was wood and they're all different. So I went to my friend and I just went to say hello. He makes trumpets. He doesn't even make saxophones. And I was explaining to him, and he said, you know what, let me try to make a ligature. And so he made these ligatures for me, and I love them. Yeah. So it's unique. And it's kind of like the labelle ligature, but it's metal. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Here's one. If you get into the Altissimo register, do you have any hints on how to incorporate them in your playing, in your improvisation?
Yeah, practice playing in the Altissimo register. Directly attack the problem straight on. So as you do your games for improvisation and creativity, one of the things you can do is say, okay, I'm just going to be always in the high register for this chorus and see how that goes. Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. I think we have time for one more. If anyone wants to be a brave soul and raise that hand for our last question, you can.
I spaced 63, someone wrote. I can't believe it. It really is the saxophone method book. What's your question?
Jacob, go ahead, Jacob.
Hi, Jacob.
I'm sorry, I didn't know how to find it. Hi from Poland. I wanted to ask, because some of the players have this special spirit in their playing. You definitely do. That's why I admire your playing, really. And there's something more than just the right notes, than just the right technique, and like you hear it in the music. And what's the thing, and how to embrace it in yourself, how to find it, and how to play music, not just the right technical stuff.
Very good question.
How to hear maybe the band more, I don't know.
Yes. Well, okay, it's like this. We're all connected, and we're all soulful people. That's why we're here on this planet together. So whatever it is that you're looking for, I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is when you find it, you'll discover that you always had it. It was always there. So I would suggest in the ways that you go along your journey in your quest for what you are looking for, be sincere with yourself and don't give up. Just keep trying, you know. We all have it. It's just at different points in our lives, we're more aware than others sometimes. But we all have that. That's what we're all pulling from. All of us have that soul.
I think that's a great note to end on. Walter, do you have any final thoughts or want to play us out? Or the floor is yours for the next couple of minutes.
The last thing I want to share with you is, well, gosh, man, we spoke so much. Thank you so much for coming out here. And I love all of your questions and comments. It's really important. And the fact that we're all here together shows how important music is. It's really important that we come together through this music, especially in this time, as difficult it is around the planet. And thank you so much. And I guess I'll play, you want me to play another song?
Only if you want to. The last thing I'll say is just keep up with us on social media. Search for Jazz Lincoln Center on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, jazz.org. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Walter, play us out.
All right, I'll play a couple seconds of this.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Walter.
Until next time.
See you next time.
Okay.
Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend. Happy Friday.
Ciao.
Bye.